Be sure to like and subscribe to Starbound here on YouTube. It ain't much, but it's honest work. I have always hated these meetings. What point is there in grandstanding pathetic rituals and celebrations for the induction of yet another race of pathetic weak-willed worms? There are thousands of these so-called species in the galaxy. Their worlds are so peaceful and safe that it is a given for intelligent life to evolve. It's like celebrating the rise of a star every morning. It is inevitable, predictable. There is nothing special about it. And yet this Republic Council of such races insists on holding these new species presentations every time it happens. It's the same every time as well. Some thin, frail, pale, and thin-skinned race of intellectual pacifists steps forth to proudly describe just how mundane their world is, to tell of their peaceful culture and the all-too predictable course of their history. They gain self-awareness. Their intelligence enables them to cultivate crops. Their numbers grow too large for their planet, and so they unify to develop space-age technology, so they may leave the clutches of their world's gravity well. These people have no concept of true gravity. A scant few ever engage in conflict before their rise to space. And even then it is rarely anything more severe than a small skirmish, claiming perhaps a few hundred lives. And then they deign to call that a war. Natural disasters are so rare that most of them go through a decade of culture shock upon learning that it is even possible for species to evolve on a world that has a persistent light breeze, let alone a hurricane or an earthquake. My people went through shock as well, but for entirely different reasons. When we first took to the stars, we were shocked to find it possible for anything but the cruelest of environments to produce intelligence. We expected such plain and safe worlds to lack the driving factors needed to justify such evolution. Yet, the fact that we alone are the only species to have ever evolved on what the rest of the galaxy calls a death world is proof of precisely the opposite. For a time, we basked in it, using the fear the others had for our might, our durability, our everything. We muscled our way into positions of power. It worked. Too well. Now there are few to truly challenge us. If not for the fact that biological advantage holds little true sway in wars conducted from the bridges of command vessels, we would likely have sole rulership of the galaxy. But even our history of wars and combat is not enough to overcome the might of the Republic fleet. So instead, we are relegated, stereotyped as the mindless brutes. The walking masses of meat and muscle who know only how to hit things. For all their so-called intelligence, they understand so little of our culture. We have scientists too. We have art, music. Even with the durability of our scales and the edges of our teeth and claws, intelligence was always our greatest weapon. Yet, they see nothing but the latter. How could they? The concept of struggle is foreign to them. The only problems they have to solve are those of technological limitation, curing genetic diseases or optimizing their agriculture. They do not know what it is like to endure a freezing tundra or a blistering desert. Only that they had to spend decades researching technologies to create temperature-controlled buildings to place in such environments, if they even bothered trying to colonize them in the first place. So, it is that I, Varg Axion, fourth son of Emperor Varg of the Varg Empire, have been sent yet again as the Varg delegate to the Republic's petty induction ceremony. My father has to send someone, even if only to pretend that we're as enthusiastic about this as the rest of the Republic. Without such showings, other species might believe the rumors that we're preparing ourselves for war. The fools. As if we ever wouldn't be. So backwards are they that they cannot comprehend the concept of better safe than sorry, or the need of the military to maintain domestic order. I set aside my irksome thoughts for this irksome ritual, as it is about to begin, and my father has made a habit of making me summarize the proceedings, just to save himself the torture of watching a recording. So it is I that must force myself to pay attention, no matter how predictable it may be. Delegate Varg, I believe you may wish to pay special attention to this one, speaks Delegate Draxi in the seat adjacent to mine. Draxi is a delegate for the Juriyith Combine, who are the ones which made first contact with this new species and so are already familiar with their details. I only tolerate my seat besides her because hers is one of the few peoples who even barely understands my own. They evolved syncretically alongside another group on the same world and for a short period came to blows over control. The only other faction in the entire Republic that engaged in what my people would call a true war, even if the scale of it was small, and its duration short before they opted for cooperation. But I had to ride nonetheless. What for? Did this one have another so-called war? How many times is it this time? 10? 100? Perhaps the reason you bothered speaking to me is because it's finally over 1,000. But she only chuckles, a most irritating chirp of her more primitive avian vocals. Just pay attention. I promise you'll actually like these. I doubt it, but fine, I shall humor you. I have little choice in any case. I'd rather this torture than my father's temper. It begins. Delegate Draxi stands, announcing through a projection device. Delegates of the Republic Council, welcome, all of you, and thank you once again for attending this most illustrious of occasions. Today is a celebration, for we are joined by a new delegate to the Council, for a new species, only recently discovered by my people, the Juriyith Combine. Hailing from a frontier sector near the unexplored arms of the galaxy, they are the furthest yet from the core of the Republic. Yet let not the distance fool you. They are a cultured people, but I digress. This is their time to shine. I give now the floor to Delegate Smith of Humanity United. She waves an arm downwards to the center of the council chamber. There stands the new delegate, the new member of the new species, behind the podium with a projection device embedded with a translator to galactic standards so they may speak to the entire council around them at once. As I expected, pale and clearly thin-skinned. I can see the flow of their blood with every beat of its heart quite clearly. Though I am mildly amused to see that they are not quite so frail as typical. I can see a decently sized musculature, though I do not know how much of that is actually effective. Species from worlds with particularly low gravity often evolve highly bloated and swollen body structures. It also has fur on its head and face, but not very much. Still more than most, but no claws. Its teeth are square, though I do note a small number of pointed ones. Omnivores, then? It speaks, though its pitch is relatively deep that ultimately means nothing. Thank you, Delegate Draxi. Ladies, gentlemen, and others of the Republic Council, I am Delegate Smith. John Smith, to be specific. Human names share the common individual family structure, though there are many who have additional names in the middle or who put their family name first. Intriguing. Variety in the names. Very atypical. Similar to VAR conventions, in fact. Though I do not believe any of my people would dare put their personal name before their clans, there are a few who value their earned titles more so than their blood. It continues. My people call themselves human, humans in plural, and humanity when referring to all of us at once. No differentiation between genders there, but a great deal of our languages, of which we have hundreds, do make gender-based distinctions for most types of nouns. I'll not go through the list here, as that would see all of you sitting for days. It chuckles and many of the council follow suit. I snicker, but for the ceremony the difference between a few hours and a few days hardly matters. It is torture all the same. Yet I cannot help but find myself vaguely interested. Hundreds of languages. That is very unusual. A trait shared only by my own people, where every clan has its own private language, for use within the clan only. Inter-clan matings are fairly rare, but in the few cases where one clan does not absorb the other, it is either the individuals who pick one to remain with, or, in very rare cases, form an entirely new one. Could they possess a similar structure? Is this what Jiraxi was referring to? I glance over, seeking confirmation, but she has nothing to offer besides her typical cunning grin. The damnable woman is always playing games with me. There is a moment of silence as the human delegate seems to look over a handful of documents, likely trying to decide what mundane quality of their world is worth speaking of first, as if any of it is special. I believe it may be best to begin by telling you all about our home planet, and after that, our history of most predominant cultures. It has decided, and as usual, it was given access to the chamber's holoprojector, and now displays their home system. Main sequence star, no special characteristics. 8 planets, dozens of planetoids, millions of smaller bodies. A bit busier than most systems, but nothing atypical besides the number of large planets. The parent star must have been quite massive to produce 4 giants and 4 large rocky bodies. It zooms in now on their homeworld, the third body from the star. Next to it is displayed a list of characteristics. Radius, general composition, gravity well? Oh, now that is intriguing. Their world's gravity is almost identical to Varg itself. Composition and radius are nearly the same. Predominantly mineralized water and a great deal of heavy metals. Though their atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, where the Varg is mostly argon. This Earth of theirs also has significant portions of oxygen and carbon, just like Varg. A strange name for their planet, or perhaps it is the species name that is strange. Perhaps Earth is simply the name of their most powerful clan, and some ancient figure of the clan elected not to call the species by their own name. The gravity is the interesting detail, however. That means the musculature I see in the delegate is not just bloat, it is genuine. They need to be strong just to stand. And I certainly see no signs of aquatic or avian features, unless they possess a shocking degree of mutability. On second look, I see it now. That same awkward stance every Varg has when on a foreign station, trying desperately to stay balanced under low gravity. The neural evolution that allows for atomic self-balancing is fooled by the lower gravity and is constantly overcompensating. It requires training just to walk without leaping into the air with every step. Jiraxi is right. I like these ones already, though I must chide myself. It is too early to make such claims. A large planet does not necessarily mean a harsh one, nor does it guarantee that they will share my people's other qualities. Given their abject lack of any clear combat adaptations, it is far more likely that they are a peaceful race like all the others. But even so, a small part of me is hopeful, desperate for any reason to care about this ceremony. The delegate speaks again after a moment, as murmurs from amongst the council die down. It seems I am not the only one who noticed their world's similarity to Varg. Terra, Mother Earth, though we usually just call it Earth, which I am somewhat embarrassed to say translates to just dirt. Not very creative, I know, but that's what our ancestors came up with, and we've no inclination to change it. The most predominant feature of our planet is the water. Nearly 70% of its surface is covered in it, and 97% of that is so heavily mineralized that it's poisonous to us. Not to mention that our industrial revolution further poisoned it with frankly ridiculous amounts of pollution and industrial waste. Though, with the aid of the Juriyeth Combine, we have been steadily rectifying this. Poisonous water covers the vast majority of their world. Varg's surface is also mostly water, but it is not toxic. We relied upon it, in fact, in our most primitive days. Though they said that it was toxic due to mineralization. Varg's oceans are also mineralized, so perhaps it is just that they cannot process high concentrations of alkaline metals. Weak, if so. But to have survived despite such a limitation on a world where only 3% of its water is drinkable, that at least deserves respect. As a result of this, humanity evolved primarily in inland regions on the largest continental landmass, though it didn't take long after we'd gained significant intelligence to spread all over the world. While we evolved in one of the hottest and most arid regions of our planet, our ability to survive was enough that we could endure the harshest environments our planet had to offer. It elaborated before switching the holoprojector to avian eye views of rolling landscapes of stunning variety, a shocking number of which bore striking resemblance to Varg, if with significantly more greens, browns, and blues rather than reds, purples, and black. Scorching deserts that boil in the day and freeze over at night. Lush jungles filled with thousands of species of poisonous and venomous plants, insects, and animals, and large predators. Vast snowy tundras and ice shelves with almost no resources to speak of. Wide open grasslands, dense forests, isolated islands. You name it, Earth has it, and humanity survived it. All before ever adopting agriculture. The council chamber was filled with gasps, oohs, and ahs. A not unsubtle number of gazes turned towards me. There were few who did not immediately make the connection. This is almost exactly the same presentation as that given by my 5 times great-grandfather, Emperor Varg Nuwan the Diplomat, when he introduced our species to the council. He had done preliminary research on the frail races we were to stand beside and noted how safe their worlds were compared to ours, and so decided to emphasize this difference in order to earn the fear and respect of the entire galaxy. And now, Delegate Smith John of Earth is doing exactly the same. I am no longer slouching in my seat. In fact, I am no longer sitting. I stand in respect. The human did his homework, and I am not so uncouth as to let that go unappreciated. There are none in the council who do not know of this particular custom of my people. When a Varg stands from an available seat, you have their full, undivided attention. Though I silently chuckle to myself as I imagine there are few in the council who could discern the subtle differences between aggressive and respectful Varg stances. There are likely many who believe I am being defensive or potentially threatening, though Jiraxi has sat beside me long enough to tell that I have nothing but respect. Delegate Smith continues, though now he departs from the script used by my ancestor. Good. They do have some originality, it seems. However, even these dangerous environments, each with their own host of dangerous predators, pale in comparison to the greatest danger that Earth has to offer. He switches the projector now to what appears to be a model of a human body, though oddly it has an extra set of limbs. Humans! I make no joke. Besides diseases of all kinds and old age, the number one cause of death for humans is other humans. In most cases, it is some kind of accident, especially those involving our automotive vehicles. But over the course of our history, before the Juriyith Combine discovered us, a grand total of 1.5 billion humans have died as a direct result of conflict and strife. And that figure is from our inter- and international wars alone. It does not include the thousands who die each year to murder, or the slightly lower number of accident-related deaths. So, let me tell you more about the human, Earth's most dangerous predator. The projector switches now to what appears to be a small clan of primitive humans, wearing rags made of what looks like some kind of skin and wielding very primitive tools. He speaks again. Humanity began as small tribes of hunter-gatherers. Once our ancestor species had developed enough intelligence to form complex social groups and a taste for meat, it did not take long for us to develop our favored hunting method. The projector shows a group of primitive humans stalking a large group of animals, all of them four-limbed and significantly larger than the humans. I expect to see joint hunting tactics. An initial assault wounds a member of the herd spooks and runs away. The injured one cannot keep up, and so the hunters close in for the kill. My expectation is subverted. There is an initial assault, but it is highly ineffective. Their weapons seem to do little to the large beast, but stick out of them as they run. In fact, many of their attacks miss outright. I fail to see how this is their favored method, or perhaps they are showing a failed hunt on purpose. The projector jumps. It's the same herd and the same group of humans, doing it again, but the environment has changed slightly. Now it shows the humans chasing them. That's a bad idea. If any of that herd turned to fight, instead they would find themselves outmatched quickly, especially since they clearly possess no natural weapon. But it doesn't happen. The animals simply continue running. The projector jumps again. Now it's night. The same herd. The same humans. What are they getting at? Then it occurs to me, the herd is asleep, and they just spent the better part of their entire day running, and many of them are still injured. They are exhausted, which means now... Yes, I see. Most of the herd awoke and ran, but a not insignificant number of them are moving very, very slowly compared to the rest, and some failed to awaken at all. The humans, meanwhile, move as though they have an endless supply of stamina. With so many of the beasts so severely exhausted, they are no match for the hunters in their prime. A clever strategy. The humans must have some kind of endurance-related adaptation which allows them to simply outlast their prey. The patience that would require is extreme. Varg are very impatient by nature, always ready to leap into action, a holdover from our days of ambush predation. But this kind of strategy requires boundless patience and foresight. They must have an incredible capacity for long-term planning. This is the message he is sending to any who might seek conflict. We are ready. I make note of this. Should our people come to war, we must be wary of their every move, no matter how seemingly trivial or mundane. They can and will engage in battles of attrition if they believe they have the advantage. Though, to be honest, I would prefer to make allies of these people. I see only benefits to such an alliance. He speaks again, and I listen closely. But as we depart from our roots, naturally this strategy is not enough to sustain our growth. Agriculture and animal domestication develops in a small valley between two rivers, and quickly finds itself adopted all over the world within the span of a couple millennia. We grow from tribes into villages, into towns, into cities, into empires, into nations. As our needs grow, settlements near one another trade the things they have for things they need from the other. An economy is born. We develop currencies and distribution systems, roads and traders. We learn how to mold the environment to our purpose, taking the riches of the earth and turning them into buildings, vehicles, tools, and weapons. Yes, weapons. For even though we long since dominated the food chains of nearly every environment on the planet, there were still other humans to consider. Only 3% of all the water on our planet was usable, and the vast majority of that was locked in rivers and lakes, which distributed only to the areas immediately around them. Space needed for agriculture was far more valuable than anything else in the world, and the resources needed to efficiently develop and use that space came from a limited number of mines. The vast majority of human conflict is over scarce resources. There just wasn't enough to go around, and our growth was limited almost entirely by our ability to inefficiently use what resources we had. And if our progress ever stalled, and our population outstripped our ability to produce, it meant war. The projector switches now again, a highlight reel of bloody conflict. Armies of humans clad in metal and leather, riding atop domesticated beasts and driving engines of war. It was beautiful, like looking in a mirror. They'd gone through all the same steps as my people, though in our case the resource we were scarce of was heavy metals needed for our development. Without it, our bones would grow weak and frail, and so conflicts around regions where iron, copper, and other metals were prevalent was frequent and rampant. The reel continues, showing how the scale of the battles change and how their technology improves. Their armors turn from metal to fibers, their weapons from blades to projectiles of ever-increasing lethality. They develop heavy vehicles, flying vehicles, aquatic vehicles, guided munitions, and yes, the infamous atomic bomb. Once thought the exclusive nightmare child of Varg destructive tendencies, now shared by the Republic's newest species. They do not show more than that. Understandable, as anything more modern would be treading upon their current arms and armaments. Secrets, I am sure, they do not wish to share. He continues, of course, resources aren't the only thing we'd warred over. Oh? What is this? Humans are prideful, spiteful, and vengeful. We do not take insults lying down, and we often hold grudges. As our cultures developed, nationalistic pride often led to conflict in itself. As simple conflicts between different cultural regions grew into all-out war. Wars have been fought over so little as two men both courting the same woman, or over matters so philosophical as which religion is true, or more often, to whom does the Holy Land belong. Interesting. So they are not as simple as a Varg look-alike. Despite having evolved on a harsh world filled with danger and scarcity, they had the time and energy to develop the more advanced cultural concepts that my people did not encounter until our rise into space. And they had wars over them. I do not need to look to see the expressions of horror and disgust worn by the other delegates. They had thought such concepts precluded violence. They'd thought it the sole commodity of my people, the natural result of a lack of culture, religion, or philosophy. Yet here stands living proof that they were wrong. I cannot contain it. I laugh loudly and heartily so the entire chamber can hear. I bask in the ire of the delegates who once so proudly flaunted their intellectual superiority. The rest of the ceremony passes without much further event. Delegate Smith goes on to describe the finer points of his people's culture, of their concepts and ideas, of their languages and mythos, their love of fiction and of games, both digital and physical, no small number of which bear striking similarity to war simulations, no less advanced than any other species I have seen presented here, in fact, in many cases far more. They are every bit as intellectual as any of the pathetic worms who sit around me, and yet are also just as violent as my own people. A living contradiction, I am sure the other delegates would call it. Though if they took the time to truly consider my people, they would find a rich and vibrant history, if perhaps stained in the blood of struggle and conflict. Though, if there is one thing I must say against the humans, it is that they seem to be against their own violent tendencies. It is clear that they hold some kind of species-wide guilt over their bloody history. They view it as a flaw to be corrected, as a darker side to be quelled and controlled. It is not for me to judge their ego, but if I had to give them advice, it would be to cease foolish rejections of their true nature, to embrace what and who they are and find ways to indulge their needs without losing control. The Varg have a long history of creating outlets for our violence, though it is not always as safe as the other species might prefer. Death is no stranger to us, though we do not fling it so wantonly as to destroy ourselves. The humans, meanwhile, have spent so long rejecting themselves that they now sit in a precarious situation. They must be on constant vigil against themselves, lest they go too far in a moment of weakness and engage in mutually assured destruction. They have much to learn from my people, and I pray to my ancestors that they listen. As the presentation ends, Jiraxi turns to me with that same wry grin. See, I take it you like them. For the first time in my life, I return with a friendly grin of my own. Yes, I do. Thank you, Jiraxi. And the question, how is it that humans greet one another? As I walk out of the council chamber and enter the lobby, I breathe a massive sigh of relief. That went way better than I expected. I was worried that the script they gave me was a bit too much on the edgy side, that we might have given the galactic community a horrible first impression, but thankfully the latter half of the presentation seemed to do wonders to turn some of those sour gazes around. Who'd have thought that all it took to win over aliens was to show them sports, games, shows, anime, music, art, and, well, you get the picture. Damn it, there I go internal monologuing to a non-existent internal audience again. Therapist says I really need to get out of that habit. Causes some kind of objective detachment apparently. Whatever. It helps keep my thoughts organized to imagine that all of my innermost thoughts are being constantly viewed and judged by a panel of observers. Lets me counter-argue myself and more easily see the flaws of my own plans and ideas. I play both the devil and the advocate. In the dining area, I managed to secure a few exotic-looking finger foods which thankfully don't taste how they look. A good number of the other delegates are giving me weird looks. Some of them seem to be avoiding me, and a good few, far more than I was expecting, approached me directly to discuss some of the finer points of human culture. Thankfully, I was drilled in political responses and was able to redirect most of them to more direct and filtered resources than an ex-mill in a fancy suit. I wasn't really built for this crap, but that's what I get for being an overachiever in the military. The bigwigs back home didn't want to send any actually valuable personnel to an alien station, so they picked me. Telling, isn't it? Suddenly, the low hum of chatter in the room goes dead quiet. It's a bit unnerving, especially when I notice all of them looking in my direction. Or, more specifically, at the fuck-huge lizard man walking in it. Thing is easily 3 meters tall and built like a tank. Looks kind of like a cross between a crocodile and a dragon, but without the wings, and hopefully without the fire breath. Definitely not without the claws and teeth. It's got at least a few dozen of those. It's covered in thick-looking red scales, and I can't make hide nor hair of its expression. It does definitely seem to be struggling with the low gravity though, just like me. So I guess that's relatable. Sorta. Yeah, it's definitely looking at me, isn't it? Oh, shit. I remember now. This is, the Varg delegate, I think. Axiom or something? I'll just stick to Delegate Varg. Delegate Varg is definitely looking at me and walking in my direction. Higher-ups warned me that the Varg might see the presentation as a threat and to avoid inciting them at all costs. They made me spend a week in a course on Varg honorifics and political protocol just to make sure I don't accidentally declare war. Something basically none of the other species needed because apparently the Varg are the only ones whose language even has more than one word for war. That one really got me when I heard it for the first time. Every species in the galaxy except us and one other is intrinsically pacifist. Basically, none of them really had anything even close to human historical conflict. A couple small skirmishes here and there, but nothing like real war. Really makes you think, don't it? Makes you think that we're the baddies. I spend a few moments struggling to recall the Varg phrase for polite greeting between strangers, but he beats me to it with something I was not expecting. Hello, Delegate Smith. I am Varg Axion, fourth son of Emperor Varg of the Varg Empire. I would like to discuss with you terms for a human-Varg cultural exchange. Do you accept? It speaks with a deep, rumbling tone that 100% sounds like what a crocodile would sound like if it could talk. It also extends out a hand for a handshake. I definitely remember hearing in that course that extending out a hand is, to the Varg, an aggressive posture usually reserved for challenges of some kind. But he's talking about terms for a cultural exchange. Is this some kind of subtle subtext? Fuck it. He's holding out his hand for a handshake, and the last thing I want to do is leave a political delegate hanging and piss them off. I take it. Oh, sure, yeah, why not? I'll forward that to the higher-ups. Get you talking with someone a bit more specialized in the field. I'm just a retired soldier they sent because they didn't want to risk any valuable personnel. I relax my hand to let go. It doesn't. It pulls me closer, in fact, staring me down with one of its beady, slitted eyes. I'm not a coward. I hold its gaze. Not about to let a croco-dragon alien from outer space think I'm weak. Eventually it backs up and lets go, then makes that same rumbling noise it did during the presentation. Like rocks in a tumble dryer. Not sure if that's good or bad. It rumbles at me again. Retired soldier, eh? I like it. I'm a warrior myself, all Varg are to some degree. Service in our clan's armed forces is mandatory, though many only stay for as long as they are required. In my case, I served my time and then backed off from the power struggle my brothers are currently engaged in. I preferred to take the role that best serves the Empire, rather than feuding over who gets to sit upon the Iron Throne. Doesn't look comfortable anyways. I prefer a nice warm rock. I start to laugh but quickly choke it down. It looks at me strangely, so I save by pretending it was a cough. Cold-blooded, right? Need to use external sources of heat and cold to keep your body stable? It nods. Correct. I'm sure the other delegates do not appreciate discussion of the less intellectual concepts in their presence. Let us retire to a more accommodating chamber to discuss the exchange. Shit. I got roped in. Sure, okay. However, it didn't go anything like I was expecting. I was worried I'd end up having to do a delicate political dance just to avoid some kind of international incident. But instead, I ended up having a nice conversation with someone who really gets it. Turns out Axion here also answers to a bigwig, though his just so happens to be his father. Doesn't make him any less annoying than the ones I deal with. Seriously makes him pay attention to the whole presentation just so he doesn't have to watch it himself, and punishes the poor guy if he leaves anything out. He also drinks seawater, apparently. He'd love it back home, I imagine. Plenty of that stuff to go around. Also drinks the good stuff too. Let me tell you, I have a new favorite whiskey. At least, I think it's whiskey. Certainly tastes like it, but it's got one hell of a kick. Really singes the eyebrows and stands up the nose hairs. We both got wasted and ended up doing some stupid stuff I don't remember, which did turn into an incident, but the good kind, I think. The bigwigs back home congratulated me on how well I handled the Varg, which apparently secured some kind of alliance on top of the cultural exchange. So now I'm the go-to delegate for all human Varg diplomatic talks. Just fucking great. Sometimes I wish I could be an underachiever.